Criticism is part of life, whether it comes from a friend, a family member, a colleague, or even from ourselves. It's absolutely unavoidable. And for many of us, especially those who have suffered from trauma, criticism it can honestly feel really unbearable and really deeply personal. And today I want to explore why criticism is so difficult to manage, particularly if we have had a history of trauma, anxiety, stress, and depression, and how it relates to our childhood experiences and why it creates these deep-seated emotional behaviors that become really, really difficult to manage. So, what is criticism? Well, actually, it's an expression of disapproval or of judgment, and it's regarding someone's actions, their behavior, or their character. And it can take many, many forms, but it ranges from constructive criticism, which helps to offer feedback intended for improvement, to destructive, which seems to be demeaning or belittling. But for an individual with trauma, any form of criticism, regardless of its intent, whether it's a trigger, can trigger our feelings of rejection, of shame, of inadequacy. So understanding what criticism is and how we react to it is our first step towards healing our relationship with our feedback. Now, this is actually a really big problem for us because so many people have been affected or suffering from the symptoms of trauma. So it's really quite a large problem. And not many of us can deal with criticism constructively anyway when we've had anxiety, stress, trauma, or any other form of PTSD. We find it really, really hard. Now, criticism, even when it's meant to help, often feels really uncomfortable. And this discomfort generally comes from our brain's survival mechanism. It's when we receive criticism, our brain might interpret it as a threat. So it activates our fight, flight, freeze response. So for someone struggling with trauma, this reaction is just amplified due to some of our deeply unresolved emotional wounds. So we have a fight or flight response. So criticism can feel like an attack on our identity, and it triggers our defensive or our avoidant reaction. And that's pretty hard to work through yourself. It also affects our core beliefs. So trauma often will leave an individual with negative beliefs about themselves, such as I'm not good enough, or I'll never succeed, or I'm not worthy of feeling loved. So criticism reinforces our beliefs, and it makes it pretty difficult to rationally process feedback. It also instills this fear of rejection for us, and criticism can be perceived as rejection, leading to feelings of abandonment, unworthiness, not being loved. And when you are a trauma survivor, when you've experienced trauma or rejection in the past, it simply amplifies the whole situation. Now, criticism can be formed, and most likely has been, in your childhood. And that may come from a situation where caregivers, parents in particular, maybe it was a teacher, maybe it was your environment you grew up in, it could be your friendship group, were all really judgmental. And the number one reason is parental criticism, because what it ends up becoming is you learn to equate love with approval, and then the fear of criticism becomes a withdrawal of affection. So it's a pretty difficult emotion to deal with yourself. Even if we get constructive criticism at times, we can perceive it as judgment on your character and on any action that you take. So generally everything becomes really difficult for you, and that's in itself extremely hard. So how does criticism affect us in adulthood? Well, it affects our personal relationships, it can affect our professional life, and having had trauma, makes dealing with criticism or managing criticism really, really hard. So we need to develop some coping mechanisms because it makes it hard in the following categories. We tend to overgeneralize, we will avoid, we become hypervigilant, and those three combinations leads to chronic stress and exhaustion. So this mind just isn't able to function properly. So what strategies can we use to manage criticism? First of all is reframing the criticism. So shifting your perspective and looking at criticism as, who was it that criticized me? What is the message, rather than taking the emotion from that criticism? And is this a personal attack, or is it about something I've done, like work? And it's really important that you also develop some self-compassion. So talk to yourself with kindness. So actually, I'm doing the best I can here, and I don't think I've done such a bad job, but let me see if I can incorporate any improvements. Now, if criticism strikes a chord with you today, and you feel that it's made worse due to your trauma or PTSD, please get in touch with us. At the bottom of my live, I'll be posting the link to our free masterclass. Please have a listen to our masterclass. Take as much learning from it as you can. And if you're struggling, don't struggle on your own. Book a consult with us.